welcome to Gotta Run with Will. My name is Rudy Garcia-Tolson, and we are here with special guest Benjamin Green. Ben, how are you today?
I'm very well, Rudy. How are you?
Can't complain. And so I follow you on social media a lot, and I see that you're always at races doing something every weekend. So what was your last race you just did?
Last race was a sprint triathlon yesterday where I guided a visually impaired athlete. And yeah, it was excellent.
Nice, nice. Now, I definitely want to talk a little bit more about your involvement with adaptive athletes here in New York City. But first off, what were some of your accomplishments? What have you done here in the past with triathlons and road races? What's some of your longest races?
My longest race was probably 5 or 7 years ago. I did about 5 half Ironman, but I particularly then like the short course distance, sprint, Olympic triathlons. You can have a full-time job, train very well, and get on the podium is what has worked out for me.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that Ironman stuff can be very time consuming. So I think you made a smart decision on sticking to the shorter distances. You've done New York City Triathlon a few times, I'm assuming?
I've done New York City Triathlon 6 times.
Okay. Awesome.
Maybe I've won my age group 2 or 3, and I didn't realize this was a thing then, but I cracked the 2-hour mark about 4 years ago, and they're 1:59 and change.
It's a pretty fast race.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, good. So what got you into triathlon? You know, all these sports out there, when you were growing up, did you do triathlons and road races, or, how'd you get into it?
Yeah, so I was a swimmer growing up and swimming since I was 5 years old. In college, my friends started running marathons, and at that time, running 26.2 miles seemed crazy.
A long way.
Very long.
Yeah.
So I was working at REI part-time while at school, and one of my coworkers, she said, try a sprint triathlon. I got a coach, got into it, and I fell in love with the sport because running just one thing didn't seem as crazy as putting 3 events together. That seems a little more natural.
Seems a little bit more crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So you did your first triathlon, you were hooked. You went to a whole half Ironman. What's your experience with all that?
I did this cycle where I see people, they do a sprint tri, and then the same year, the same 2-year window, they go from sprint tri to half Ironman, and then they figure out what distance do they like the most. I did that, and the reason I say that because I see athletes do that now.
Yeah.
And then I kind of fell in love with, as I said, the sprint and Olympic because I can work full time, I can train at a high level and compete at a high level. Yeah. Work-life balance.
Yeah, it definitely allows you to do more with your time, and especially being in New York City. Do you find that challenging, training and working in New York City as itself? You know, I know I've just moved here a few years ago, and I'm starting to realize the logistical challenge of just getting from one place to another. It can be very time-consuming. How's your training in New York?
I love training in New York City. I mean, people think of New York as this huge, massive place, which it is, but it also has a small hometown vibe to it. Everything is, I'll have coffee with my barber shop, or every time I go into Central Park now, I see someone I know. I see it's almost inevitable that I'm going to go running and I will see someone.
Well, when you're at races every weekend, it's only a matter of time before you run into the same people. You know, it's a small world.
Correct.
So when you're in the Central Park and you're doing your training, how do you do it in the wintertime? I mean, people always say, oh, I got to go indoors and ride on a trainer or run on a treadmill. Do you find yourself doing the same thing, or do you brave the winter and go out in the snow and, embrace the elements?
2 years ago, I started embracing the elements. Partial, I started working with New York road runners, and I committed to working in the winter months. Okay. So that forced me to go outside. I don't mind running on the treadmill or training on a trainer indoors, but it's fun to change up your gear, get out in the elements, and there is a benefit to running outside in the cold, in the snow. I mean, it can be very therapeutic as well.
I would agree. I grew up in California, and so running in the snow just doesn't seem like something wouldn't be my first choice. Especially with my running legs, I think I would slip and slide everywhere. So Ben, you're doing a lot of training in New York City. What do you do for a living? How do you make your money?
So 3 years ago, I left the ad sales world and followed my dream of, I'll call this health and wellness. Okay. I like helping people. I like working with people. It doesn't matter what your level is, if you're a sub 5-minute miler or a 13-minute miler. If you have a desire, I want to work with you. I've been working with New York road runners for the past 2 years, at Tailwind Endurance recently, and also in the audio fitness space, along with my own little small private business that I have. I say small private business because there's no website, and all of my clients have come to me organically.
Yep.
And I don't want to have to pull someone to say, no, you come here, come work with me. I'd rather be more organic and natural. It's a better fit.
I like it. I like it. So you're very in tune with a lot of athletes in New York City, and you talk about the wide variety of athletes. Now, we're here with Gotta Run with Will on the show, and people would, I'm assuming, think that you're a professional athlete, and you're this and that, and but talk a little bit more about the type of athletes that we see here in New York City, and the importance of getting somebody to just complete their first mile.
I'm an age group athlete. Some people, even going back to New York City Tri, they're like, why aren't you in the elite wave? I'm not. I'm an age group athlete. Sometimes I can perform very well as an age group, but I'm not an elite athlete. So there's that. And going back to, so I'll touch on New York Roadrunners. They have a group training where they have 5 different groups and then a fundamentals group.
Okay.
I've worked with the fundamentals group all the way to group 1, and I personally prefer groups 3, 4, 5, or the fundamentals, because it's much more rewarding for me, and it's a bigger life change for the athlete. I have found that these athletes, and everyone's an athlete, if you show up, if you put on your shoes, if you tie up your shoes and you go for a run, you're a runner, in my opinion. You might say I'm only jogging, but you're running.
Yeah.
And I say that just as the mental barrier for getting over sports, where a lot of people, there could be stigma in society. Well, I'm not a runner, I'm not a bodybuilder, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. If you show up, you're here to do what everyone else is doing, then you are a part of that community in my eyes.
I think we both agree that everybody's an athlete. We all have to embrace some type of physical activity. As we know, life is a marathon, not a sprint. And so when you're dealing with new athletes who just want to get to that first 5K, maybe their first half Ironman, half marathon, what are some of the challenges that you find that these people are having to just getting them to that first race?
I'll go back to one of the first athletes who has completed 5 marathons, and her process was she runs 2 minutes and walks 1 minute. In my opinion, you've completed 5 marathons, but you're still on a 2 minute run, 1 minute off ratio. That doesn't equal 3 in my brain.
Yeah.
So I said, we're going to get her out of this mental cycle that she has in her brain. How am I going to do it? We were on a track. We started running. I started talking and talking and talking. Next thing you know, I looked down at my watch. 20 minutes later, she had been running nonstop. So I say a lot of it is the mental
barriers.
Correct.
I think the biggest challenge in these new athletes is educating them and telling them that there's other methods. Because when you have a new athlete and they've found a way where they can get out the door and do some type of physical activity, and sometimes you look at what they're doing, it doesn't look very healthy. It doesn't look very sustainable for the long term. When you deal with these athletes and they're stuck in their ways methods, how do you, talking, you're a great talker, you can talk well, especially the positivity. What are some of the other things that you get them through?
For me, that's kind of actually the fun part of the job that's more interesting versus here's your training plan, go do X intervals, go do your long run. More of the mental and saying, okay, I've met the athlete X. They only think they're capable of Y. Well, really they can do triple Z, and getting them from Y to triple Z is what's more rewarding for me. And there's multiple variables that it takes. I mean, I like to think of the body as the frame of a house or the frame of a car. If the frame of your car is strong, then the rest of the car will operate well. But if you have really nice wheels on the car, but a weak frame, well,
we're gonna have problems.
Exactly. So I like to say you worked in finance, or you were a doctor, or you work in whatever your field is, I try to relate that to the sport, just so they can put it into their terminology. I've been working with a group recently where they're in the real estate world. And so it's all about closing the deal. Or I know you want to close that $2.5 million listing, do the work right now. And then they think, oh yeah, he's right. So
it's the same concept. So you want to get people to find a way for them to have a correlation with what you're telling them. And also it sounds like it's not a really one-size-fits-all thing. It seems like each person going for that first mile has their own unique set of challenges that you have to address and change. Is that right?
100%. I mean, everyone is different.
So Speaking on everybody is different. What talk about a little bit some of the involvement that you do here in the city with the Challenge Athletes Foundation, Achilles International, and also you have a brother, a twin brother who has a cognitive disability. Talk a little bit about how it was growing up with your brother, and then how you were able to really translate that into helping athletes here in the city now reach their potential.
Yes. So great topic, a great point. I have a twin brother. His name is Patrick Green. When he was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck and cut his oxygen supply to his brain. Patrick is he's my only blood brother. So he needs to do everything I need to do.
Absolutely.
And growing up, we would do that together. Whether we had a boat or we'd go sledding, I'd put him in a snowsuit, I'd put him in the sled with me, and we're going down the hill at 8, 9, 10 years old. I got a custom pushchair when I was living in DC. Raised $6,000, got this chair. We did 3 half marathons.
And while you were pushing him.
Correct.
Well, like a little bit of Dick and Rick Hoyt type action.
Exactly. That's been a goal of mine.
Yeah.
But as myself, Patrick needs to have the best of the best. So I'm still on this mission to find a custom bike where Patrick would be sitting in front of me, because he is about 1 inch taller than me, a little skinnier. So, but his movement, if he was behind me, I can't balance his movement if he goes right or left.
Sure, you want to make sure that bike is stable enough. And so would he actually be pedaling as well?
He might pedal a little bit, but I think he'd be more along for the ride and just enjoying it and
the cheers that everybody gives.
Exactly.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So when you do these races and you have your brother with you, what does he say about it? Does he get excited? Does he just smile? I know I see photos of you and him on your Instagram, and the man is always smiling. He seems very happy.
Thank you. Patrick is nonverbal. He doesn't speak, but he can communicate. He can be just as stubborn as you and I. Not that we're stubborn people, but
we are.
He can be.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, he's happy. He smiles. He's say if he has a water bottle, I'll hand him the water bottle, and then when he's done, he'll kind of just put his arm up, and that's my signal to grab the bottle, or else that bottle is just going to get thrown off to the side.
Got it.
So we have our own little communication.
You have your system.
Yeah, he likes to wear hats. Same thing. If he gets tired of wearing the hat, he'll kind of take it off, and I'll say, Patrick, hand me the hat, and he'll put it up, and I'll grab it. So it's we have our own little ESP going on since being twins.
That is awesome. So when you guys were growing up, did you guys go to the same school?
Growing up, Patrick and I did not go to the same school. From kindergarten on, he kind of went to a special school in Maryland for learning, and we grew up in Maryland, then moved to Virginia. In the Virginia system, you go to school till you're 21.
Okay.
So he kind of went to this program called Daybreak, and then he continued on, and he still goes to that 5 days a week. It's about 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and it's a pretty good program.
It's perfect for him.
Yes.
It works well for him.
It works for him.
I like it. So when you guys were growing up, as a young kid, I know when I was young and I have my challenges, I had a period where I had, kids bullying me, and, they would make fun of me. Did you ever have that happen? And how did that make you feel? And what did you guys do to get over it?
Yeah, so you could take Patrick and then add your grandparents raising you on top of that.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to use the word different. I mean, how did I get over that? I don't know. Some days I still don't know. I mean, we could go somewhere, even going down the street today where you're going and, people kind of look at you funny or give you an extra eye, and it's like, you kind of just persevere.
You just act like you didn't see that.
Right.
And I think that's a very interesting thing that you're kind of similar as me. When I walk around New York, I'm probably the only guy wearing shorts in the wintertime. So people look. You got 2 sticks walking. It stands out. And I think one thing that I learned from that is people looking at me is I've learned how to read people very well. I know what they're thinking just by their body language. Do you find yourself when you're walking down the street with your brother and you see that extra look, that extra natural movement that someone does? Are you the same?
Yes, I mean, some people look and they're either questioning or they're like, what the heck is going on? Or some people acknowledge and smile and they're excited to see you. So it's 100%.
Yeah. What would you say to the people who have to give you guys a second look? Like, if you could talk to them and you could say, "Hey, stop looking at us. Everything is fine." Or what would you say? Would you try to educate them? How would that work?
I try to give them a smile or some type of positive reinforcement. I mean, that's just kind of what I do. I like to.
You're a positive guy.
I mean, the glass is always half full or 3/4 full.
Absolutely.
I mean, I could have the glass always be empty, but what's the point? Why live life that way? I mean, there's no.
Especially when your brother's smiling.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you gonna
he's
do?
happy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's great. And one thing I love, this is a slight tangent from that, but he is, when I go out to eat, or when we're going to eat, if I can't decide between 2 meals, I'll order him one thing and myself one thing, and then we can share them both.
I like
So that's
it.
one little.
So it's teamwork.
Yeah, it's very.
It's teamwork. I'm like that with my buddy Roderick. When he's not wearing the shoes that I want to wear, then he'll give them to me, and vice versa. And our shoes don't stink, so it works out well. We make a good team there.
Nice.
So you have your brother, and you're in the triathlons, the fitness world here in New York City. Talk a little bit about your involvement with adaptive athletes. I know I think you said you have 3 athletes who have made it to a national level and hopefully one day to a Paralympic level. Talk about that.
So I've done quite well in the triathlon world for myself. I like to help people. I've been guiding with Achilles International for 3 years, and there's I'd say a decent sized pool of triathletes in the mix. And 2 years ago, someone reached out to me. They needed a guide for a race. I kind of gave them about half of my credentials. They did not want me as their guide, so I probably told them a little more information about myself just to say, like, hey, I'm going on this bike ride, or I used to have a motorcycle. I feel very comfortable on 2 wheels.
Sure.
I really don't even like the word disability because I feel like it has a negative stigma to it.
Like handicap.
It is a negative word,
especially
in
the
my
way people
opinion.
see it.
I could have a disability. You might just not see it to your eye or be able to hear it, but I might have my own disability that I'm working with right now. But so I like to help anybody. If you have a desire, if you wanted to do something, then I want to pull any lever I can to make it happen. I met some guys in Achilles, went on their fun runs on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and I didn't really know how that was going to work. I met a few visually impaired athletes, and I didn't even know there were different levels of being visually impaired.
You just thought blind was blind. That was
I
it.
thought, you either have sight or you don't have sight.
Sure.
So it's been a learning curve for me. I got paired up with a visually impaired athlete or blind, and the reason why I say, going back to the word disability, I like to be politically correct.
Yeah.
Even working with an amputee, I'm still learning that. What should I say? What can I not say? Because I don't want to offend you or any of your friends. And so, anyway, long story short, they connected me with a visually impaired athlete. I'm like, well, how are we going to swim? Like, how does that?
What do you tie a rope around each other?
Yeah, what? And
you're right.
These guys and girls, they had it all figured out. They had their system set up because this isn't their first rodeo per se. And we got in the pool. The JCC is right near where they train. That was great. And we went out in the open water and we did this.
You finished.
Well, we finished. Well, we had some practice first.
Sure.
But I mean, learning the bike, learning the communication to ride a tandem. And I'm very, I like to go fast sometimes.
Well, that's the only way to go. So now, to give our viewers a little bit of understanding of what it's like to guide an athlete who is completely blind. I mean, just from my own personal opinion, that's a lot of weight. Not in the sense of like the physical weight, but if you happen to zone out and stop thinking that you're guiding somebody, and there happens to be a rock or a curb or something, and that they happen to go down, that's a big responsibility, especially when you're on a bike going downhill at 30 miles an hour. It's all in your hands.
Yes.
That's a scary thing, isn't it?
I mean, I sometimes, I don't know if this is the best word to use, but I feel like I'm driving a school bus.
Yeah.
Because compared to my bicycle versus a tandem bike, it's much larger, and their life is in my hands.
Do you find that riding a tandem is different from riding a solo bike by yourself?
100%.
Why?
If the athlete in the back goes to get their water bottle, the weight is going to shift. I did New York City try with someone who was autistic, and we communicated, and he would just start grabbing his water bottle as we're going down a hill, and the bike's shifting, and I'm like, what's going on back there? So I had to communicate and just reiterate, please let me know when you need to drink, or please let me know when you're going to move. Standing up shifts the weight. Even if you just need to say you have to itch on your inner thigh.
Sure, sure.
It's going to change the weight just taking your hand off the bar.
Sure. So when you're on a tandem bike, do you use aero bars or you're all road bars?
Some tandems you have aero bars, depending what race you're doing and what level of athlete you're working with,
Sure.
or your road bike handlebars.
Right. And what about turning? Is it you have to like plan out a turn when you make a left turn or a right sharp turn, or is it pretty like just turn a wheel and you're good?
I wish it was like just turn a wheel and you're good.
Yeah.
But it was going back to yesterday, it'd be, okay, 20 seconds, we have a 90-degree turn coming up. I'll say coasting, meaning we're going to coast our feet, stop pedaling. They feel the brakes going. Our feet would be in a 3 and 6 parallel position, kind of a light turn, and then easy pedal into it. Now let's give you a little more detail. I was with an athlete by the name of Adriel yesterday, AKA the Blind Ninja, and it was his first triathlon. He wanted to qualify for nationals. There's a time goal he has to hit, and he is much smaller height-wise compared to other athletes I've been working with.
Okay.
So therefore, the control is a little more compact and condensed. We can do a little more on the bike than if, say, someone's 6'5" versus someone who is 5'9".
Makes sense.
We're going into these turns. I would put the bike in a hard gear. As soon as we're out of the turn, 2-1, stand up. So by me saying 2-1 up, he knows we're going to go right on it up, pedal a little bit, get some momentum, and then sit right back down into the saddle. So it was it's a little challenging, but we practiced this a few weeks ago. I've been riding with him for a little while, so it wasn't, it's not like riding the bike for the first time, for lack of a better term.
You've been to some of the para-triathlon national championships as well as these athletes, correct?
Yes.
And so when you're on a tandem, both pedals are working, right? So that means your power on the bike plus his power is what you're getting, right? So in a sense, you guys are putting some watts down.
We are, it's a very powerful machine. If there's a person on an individual bike and they try to pass us, it's like, no, there's 2 of us. You can't pass us.
It's a lot of power. what type of watts are you guys getting up to? 3, 4, 5, 600?
3, 4, just depends on, where we're at in the race.
Yeah.
Sometimes maybe even 700 for a quick
sprint.
10, 15 second.
It's impressive. Now the running, how does that work? Do you just say left, right, straight, or is he hearing come into effect, or how do you guys, how does that work?
So it's we have a run tether that we use. Some people use a tether at the waist, and some have a tether at the hand.
Okay. And you guys just kind of run in sync?
So it's this is a very interesting, this is a great question because I've ran with multiple visually impaired athletes, and depending, I think, if you've lost your sight or depending how long you've had vision or not had vision, there's a different reaction on the athlete. I say that I worked with an athlete who has lost his sight since the age of 6. He was much more in tune to my movement. My hand moves slightly right or slightly left. He's moving that way with me. Versus someone who's maybe lost their sight in the last 2 years. Then I kind of move slightly. I'm used to that reaction of come with or move with me, and they don't always. So it's
just depends on the level.
Depends on the level, but I've been used to a hand tether.
Yeah.
And that's we get in sync with our arm rotation. I'm really big on that, or working with any visually impaired athlete because this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So if you're running with your hand down the whole time, you're training for the New York City Marathon. Over time, you're going to have an injury from improper form.
Yes.
For anyone who has lost their sight and is running with a tether, like I'm all about form and run proper versus just get out there and go. You're already out there running. Now let's fine tune it so you can do this for the next 30 years, the next 50 years, 80 years, whatever the time frame may be.
Sport for life.
Exactly.
So when you have an athlete and is visually impaired, and say they're visually impaired from birth, and they have no idea of the surroundings on what it looks like and how things look. I know one of the challenges I had with one of these athletes is that when I was in the pool trying to teach them how to swim, and I would say something like, "Oh, just kick your feet like how a dolphin would." And the response I got was, well, what does a dolphin look like? So you continuously find yourself needing to explain things in different ways for different athletes. Is that something that you've experienced as well?
100%, and then just the power of the voice alone. Yeah. What you're saying, how you're saying, a little more hands-on movement where you could say, if I want their arm to have a little rotation, they might just move their elbow or their shoulder, but not the full upper body.
Yes.
Then I'll say, okay, I'm going to put my hands on your arms and show them how I want them to move. and then they practice it, and we kind of go back for it. And then another thing is this race we did over the weekend, it was partial on a paved trail through like a small park, running into the grass, and then we got onto a road. We're on a path, okay, we're about to be on dirt because they're gonna feel slight imbalance, and I don't want them to trip.
Yep. Yeah. So while you're running, you guys are basically just communicating the whole time what's coming up, and just any hazards that might potentially be coming up.
100%. If there's a slight turn, I might say light left, light right, or sharp turn in 20 or 30 seconds. Well, I personally like to say the time. In about 15 seconds, we're going to do X.
Okay.
Because if I say sharp turn, then they might think I'm about to make a sharp turn.
Right.
Versus in 20 seconds, all right, I know it's coming up, I'm going to do this. And I find that works best, at least for me.
Very cool. Now, working with these athletes, all different type of abilities, what are some of the takeaways that you take from that? Like, why do you enjoy that so much?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, I like helping people.
You like helping people.
If you want to do something and you have just 1% of the desire, then I want to help you find whatever you need to do this. I might not have the means to do it myself, but I might have 30 different friends that can help you. It's about them moving. Like, people think, even my brother, okay, he has this disability, he needs to sit in a room all day. No, he has a personality, he has a brain. The same with anyone who is an amputee, who had lost their sight, or has some other type of cognitive so-called disorder, because they can enjoy all these things. I just feel that society in the last 20, 30 years says they can't go to the beach to feel what the sand feels like, or they don't enjoy these things.
Sure.
And I want them to experience it all. My next adventure, I hope, might be adaptive skiing. I would like to do that. I would love to ski with someone who is visually impaired, who has never been on snow, never been on a mountain, just to try that. Or trail running. I've learned that in trail running, you're connected with like kind of a pole in between each other, where you're running, the guide is in the front and the athlete is directly behind you, to change the level of terrain.
Wow.
I've only learned just a very little bit of this. I have not done it, and it's about experiencing these elements. Like you said, someone who was born without sight, or if someone had sight until, say, they were 10, they know what the blue sky looks like. They know what the mountain range is. They know if there's a beautiful sunset. And so I'm getting goosebumps going down my body saying this, but to say, wow, the sky right now is this beautiful orange or crisp thing. Or I'm going to go slightly further and saying, some of these people are single.
Yeah.
Single males, females, whatever their sexual orientation may be, and they need to have a partner in life. And so it's like, hey, there's a guy or a girl that they might be interested in, or there's, this person that you might like, or there's X type of athlete in the pool that you're swimming with. So have your A game on right now. I mean, it's much more than just...
So you got to be the set of eyes while we're racing, but also you're a set of eyes when it comes to a relationship with these guys. That's the responsibility that I would not want to have, because that's very cool. So you love giving back. You love being involved in all these adaptive sports activities. You want to see other athletes really make that leap, and it's a big confidence changer for a lot of these athletes who maybe never thought they could do a sport, and all of a sudden, you're in their ear and you're telling them what they can do. With these athletes that you find who are new, who are adaptive as well, what are some of the challenges you might find with these guys? Is it equipment? Is it getting the equipment needed? Because I know some of the adaptive sport equipment can be very expensive.
Say I'm going to go for a prosthetic. Like, getting a new set of legs is not cheap, or getting a leg. And then I can't even imagine the kids. Children are growing every day. So if you have one set of legs when you're 3, or a leg or arm, then it's you're going to need something new over time. So there's an athlete I met through Achilles who she needed a biking arm. She was having shoulder pain. I've recently learned of different prosthetics company in New York City. I reached out to one where she got it. They said, well, Ben, we have 3 other options that this individual could try. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to call her Sunshine. Like, Sunshine, you're having this pain. There's 2 other devices you can try. Yeah. And they say, well, I don't know if I can afford it or afford this. Well, there's amazing organizations. CAF, the Challenge Athletes Foundation. I mean, I know one person who got a grant for a new bicycle. A good friend of mine got a grant for a new set of running legs, which is, that's huge.
That's a game changer.
It's night and day. And so having, different relationships, partnerships, and putting it all together, because there's one goal, and it's back to the athlete.
Getting those athletes out there is getting these athletes who are being told no by other people, and we want to be the yes men. We want to tell them, yes, you can. I think we're on a mission here in New York City. We want to get more, especially the kids. Talk a little bit about any involvement with any adaptive of the kids in the area.
Slightly. So I'm just going to take a step back from that. Is I like working with kids. My youngest swimmer is 20 months old right now.
Wow.
I also teach like a little water aerobics to the older population.
So you're involved with Achilles. They are very prominent in New York City. They have a big community, and they have Achilles kids. Are you involved with them as well?
I've done a little work with Achilles kids, and then I've also guided some of the visually impaired athletes at the JCC, which is the Jewish Community Center.
They have an adaptive swim program, correct?
Correct. They have an adaptive youth swim program. And so that's been quite amazing. And then just to touch on going back to the adults, I did my first ever group fitness class in adaptive sports. Now this was, you name it in this room, somebody might have had this so-called situation to prevent them from optimal performance that a so-called able body could do.
Or excuses.
Yes,
Yeah.
or excuses. I like that even better.
Yeah.
That was interesting. I mean, that was, all right, if I say one thing, it might upset somebody else, so how am I going to word that right? But it's going back to strength and running. Yes, we can go and move the body and do just go in a forward motion, but we have to add some type of strength training to your routine. Okay, I don't care if you're 12 years old or 70 years old or 90 years old. You need some type of mobility and strength work going back to the frame of the house or the frame of the car, which is the core of our body. And any individual needs that. It doesn't matter where you are at in life or where you're at in this world and what you're working with. I believe you need that to be an optimal runner, to be healthy, safe, and most importantly, avoid injury.
Absolutely. So your philosophy on running and getting people out the door is being smart, in short. Is that right?
Run smart. And I even have this other philosophy on a hill that I came up recently working with some New Yorkers here, is Diva the Hill.
Diva the Hill.
Diva the Hill. It was a new runner, and going back to how do you work with someone? Well, this individual was somewhat of a diva. So he said, you know what? I need you to be a diva on this hill and Diva the Hill. So it goes back to, it's not going to work for everybody. That might not work for you.
Sure.
But it might work for your roommate. And so therefore, I'll try what I can. And as long as it works for one person, then my job is complete.
Well, I think your philosophy is working because you have a lot of athletes who are following you. You have a lot of athletes who look for you for guidance and literal guidance as well. You're getting these guys to the national championships for paratriathlon, and I think here in the next year, going into Tokyo, we're going to see maybe an athlete or two from our home base make it to the Paralympic team, which is very exciting. Now, for some of our viewers who might be on the couch and might be scared to take that first step, to make that first mile, what would you tell them? How would you get them out?
So this happened the other day. Someone messaged me on social media, and they're like, I want to do this 5K in October. Sign up for the race or the event. And I don't call every race. I call them some of them events because a race might seem too overwhelming.
Too much.
Exactly.
Sure.
Pay the money and sign up. Why do I say this? It took me about 4 months talking about doing a triathlon until someone said, Ben, sign up. Once you've paid the money,
you're committed.
Exactly. You've invested. It doesn't matter if it's $20 or if it's $150. Some races might be, but you've paid, so you're going to work. You're going to have bad days. There's going to be hard days. There's going to be days where you might hate your coach or the community you're working with. But if you really want to hit that goal, you'll do the work. And so paying for it, signing up, you will get there.
I like it. Now, what about for some of our adaptive athletes who might be out there who might think, there's no way I'll be able to swim. There's no way I'll be able to do this or this. How would you get them out? What are we saying to them?
I mean, one, I would find a program that can assist them, or it's if you want to do this, then I might be able to personally help you, or I've got a friend who lives out in Long Island, or someone who's on the Jersey Shore, or someone in upstate New York, or someone in the Catskills who can help you. I mean, it's all about people helping people. It's all about connecting them with the right person in the area who believes the same things that you believe, I believe, and wants to help this athlete.
It's getting connected with the community.
Exactly.
I love it. Benjamin Green, we've had a great time. Benjamin Green, it's a pleasure having you on Gotta Run with Will.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Gotta Run with Will. I am your host, Rudy Garcia-Tolson, and I just want to give a special thank you to the Manhattan Neighborhood Network, to Gotta Run with Will Sanchez, to all my sponsors, Challenge Athletes Foundation, OSER, New York Roadrunners, Tailwind Endurance. Thank you for all your support here in New York City. I want to thank, of course, my family for all the love and support they've given to me. And to everyone out there who supports us adaptive athletes in New York City, thank you, thank you, thank you. Gotta run.